how these heels work. You want to sit? Oh, you want to sit here?
Yeah. Tell me where you feel comfortable with.
Where I can see.
Yeah, where you can see.
Because blind.
How about I sit right here and then I'll hold it in my lap.
Just know that this is hot. The mic is hot. This is one floor. So it's not going to stress me. There we go. Okay. So all you need
Drink your water.
is when I look at you, and I look at you, it's time to
Have a drink.
Okay, let me see. Thank you, baby.
Okay, so how do I advance?
Page down. Page down, look at you. It just takes a minute. Thank you, baby. Miles, you're listening for. Just check.
Didn't work. Did not, and then we were sitting there trying to use the regular remote.
Didn't work. All right, let me try again. Wow, I have other people listening, which is great, I guess. There's somebody else picking up right now.
So Sherry, what about this one that's up there? Is that one going to advance too?
Oh yeah, this is actually in my. Oh, this does show. We could probably just use this. Can you figure that out, Miles, for me? You should probably be able to just do this, and it'll show the notes to me here.
We're still in school, our kids still have school syllabus. I don't know why.
Oh no.
We go back.
Oh, here's the page down. Mm-mm. There we go. Yeah, okay, so you don't need that.
You sure?
Yeah.
The city even has
Just playing on somebody's phone.
Memorial Day. That, yeah, so they've been out. Now they're half, the kids that the kids know, out of school, the other half, you know. And that's not, so it's like, I got here. We're still going to do something, so we're doing active. We've been doing all this, like, it's like, oh, yeah, here's all this stuff.
What, that's the plan. Can you let me see that?
We got the whole set for Aspen Park. And we were like, okay, you'll do this amount of work, we started it.
You know what? Okay.
No, I'll just move out. Yeah. I'll stand right here for you.
Who in the room, whose first name begins with the letter A? Hi, can I borrow you for a moment?
She's like, do I say my name?
see what we can do. Ah, there we go. Well, let's try that again. Welcome to Sankofa Griot, storytelling to heal generational curses. My name is Debbie Plotnick, and I'll be moderating this session, and I'll be available should you require assistance. Before we get started, I have a couple of quick announcements. I want to give a big shout out to those of you who are attending this session online. Hi, online folks. Be sure to post your questions for our speakers in the chat. This session is worth 1 hour of continuing education credit. If you're interested in receiving continuing education credits, please visit the CEs through the NASW VA, NASW Virginia tab on your virtual or your conference app or the virtual platform. After the session, please make sure and complete the session evaluation form that's listed in the session description. Don't forget to post on social media. Use hashtag MHAConf, that's CONF 22, and tag at Mental Health America. Lastly, we know that some content can be triggering. Please take care of you. If you need to step out or log off, please feel welcome to do so. If you're in person and you need some support or to step out, please visit our wellness room in Yellowstone Everglades room in the other tower on the second floor. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Sherry James is an accomplished executive coach and people leader. Sherry, I just forgot what your PMP stands for, Sherry.
It does not stand for pimp.
I just asked and it went out of my head. She is a professional management person. Did I get that one right now? Project management professional. Thank you, Sherry. Has been actively engaged on the speaker circuit for well over 10 years. Her presentations have taught audiences next generation leadership, corporate mental health, suicide prevention, and leadership development. Ms. James created the nonprofit 2020 Lives Changed, Inc., to touch lives by facilitating difficult conversations regarding mental wealth management. Sherry?
Oh, wow. I was not ready. Awesome. Hello. Good afternoon. Do you have the microphone? I do. I want to make sure that before we get out the mic, the person in the very, very back of the room can hear me. I'm sure can. Awesome. Thank you. All right, we're gonna start this session a little differently. So I do have a presentation, and we're going to use it, I promise. But what I know is that you guys just finished lunch. Yes? How many people ate? All right, looks about 100%. So, what we're going to do is we are going to move. So if you have things on your lap, things that are in your hands, I'm going to ask for you to put those in a safe space. We're going to play a little bit of music, and I'm going to ask you to move your body a little bit. Because storytelling is not just about what we say, it's about how we feel, and it's about how we move. So I thought, what better music than, oh my gosh, not that song, because that's inappropriate. All right, so we're going to get up.
Okay, I will use a mic cap. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move about. I really don't care how you move, but I want you to try to move every part of your body. We are becoming a griot. A griot is a storyteller. Would you want to listen to a storyteller that talked like this for the entire time? You don't want that, right? So we're going to move, right? The song is called No Woman, No Cry. We are at Mental Health America. We're talking about moving forward together. How about if we move together? Can we do that? We can do that. Look at that. That's amazing. The beauty of this moment is what we're going to talk about today, the importance of moving together. Now, while we're moving, just to keep you on your toes, certain friends have musical instruments. And when I say the word Sankofa, these people are going to play their musical instruments however they feel like doing it. So we're going to do a trial run. Are you guys ready?
I'm going to say Sankofa, but then I want the rest of you to repeat it really, really loud after me. Can you do it? That's dancing and talking at the same time. We sure we can do it? After lunch? All right. Sankofa. I love it. Let's try it again. My musicians, this is your time to shine. You might get like a recording artist contract or something. You never know what'll happen, right? All right, we're going to try this one more time. Sankofa. I love it. You guys are great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a seat. Have a seat. Now that I believe that we are all awake and we are ready to talk about this amazing thing called a griot, I'll pause Bob. I think he'll be okay. We'll give Bob Marley a moment. So let me tell you a little bit more about who I am first, and it'll explain a little bit about why I believe this presentation is so important. I spent actually 30 years in corporate America on stages, teaching, training things from project management to servant leadership to being a woman in a technology-based organization. I did all of that. It was so cool. People would see me on stages and go, she seems to be a pretty cool kind of leader person. Her team likes her and they stick around. What they never knew is that I lost both of my parents to suicide when I was very young. I lost my dad at the age of 7. He was a Vietnam vet. He served in Vietnam and he came back very different. My mother actually found him and was never able to process that information. So if we think back, for those of us who are old enough, in the 70s, there weren't a lot of resources, things like conferences like what we are today. There was no place for her to process that grief, no person to talk to, and especially as a person of color, it was extremely taboo. We don't talk about what's going on in our family, you just deal with it. You either deal with it, drink with it, do drugs with it, but what you don't do is talk about it. So for the next 20 years, my mother died by the slowest suicide. She began to drink too much, she began to party, she partied too much. Her alcoholism eventually became a cocaine addiction. Her cocaine addiction became a crack addiction, and I became her currency. So the earlier part of my life is memories of my mother standing in the doorway while I provided services for her drug habit. Now that is hard to say. So it's a visceral feeling, right? You guys feel that in your gut? There's a emotion that happens there. Here's some good news. This gut place that we either just filled up with lunch, right, or not, because I didn't, this place is where we feel a lot of things. We understand that serotonin also is created in our gut. When we have those gut feelings, we should probably follow them. So a couple of years ago, in the middle of a presentation when I was talking about project management, which, how many people know project managers? Anybody ever work with any? Everyone's like, sort of. How many of you guys would love to be a project manager one day? Crickets. Absolutely nothing. Exactly. We don't tend to be a very exciting bunch, right? We tend to say, here's what you need to do, here's when it needs to be done, here's how long you have to get it done, and here's how much money you get, right? Is that pretty much it? I decided at a project management conference that I had spoken at for years and years and years, and they're like, Sherry James is back. She's going to do this presentation. She's the mother of 2 children. She's graduated from this Women Unlimited program, which, I mean, I had all these accolades, and the guy who has always presented and opened up for me said, and she wrote a book about suicide. Let's get started. And I was like, wait, we missed a pretty big part about my presentation. I did write a book, and it is about suicide, but he was so ashamed to tell my story. So my shame became his shame in just a matter of an introduction. So I changed my life. At the age of 48, I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to having these uncomfortable conversations about survivor's guilt and what it feels like to have a parent who might have been lost by suicide. And also the conversations about what do we do proactively. So I've spent the last 2 years after COVID writing curriculum because my first job was at AT&T as an instructor. I don't know if you guys remember this. I'm sure I'm the only one that remembers in instructor-led training. Does anybody remember that? Like when you went to a job and they actually put you in a room and they actually showed you what to do for like 12 weeks before you got to do anything? That was like so long ago. Huh? I did put our ages out there. So sorry about that. But that was my first job, and I loved doing that. Who knew that this many years later, I could take that same skill set and help people heal? I am going to, and he's going to hate me for this, I'm going to introduce you to my son, Miles. Miles is 14 years old. Miles is one of the proudest parts of my legacy. My daughter is 33. She is a cardiac ICU nurse at Memorial Hermann in Houston, Texas. She's got 2 masters working on her PhD. So I feel like I've done my part in trying to break this generational curse, right? I could have ended up in the same situation as my mom. I had a very long period of my life where drinking was my favorite thing to do until my therapist made me talk about my trauma. I could talk about anything else on the planet. I could tell you stories about everything. And today we'll talk about some apples, which will be really random. Trust me, it'll all come together. But I did not want to tell the story of my past. Why do you think that was? Why didn't I want to talk about my story? Shame. What else? Fear, absolutely. My moderator, do we know if we have, oh, go ahead. Survivor's guilt is really big, absolutely. Because if I thought about it, if you think about how we think as a 7-year-old, and my parents are both, my dad is gone, who else's fault could it be but mine? I'm the only child. When my mom died by the same situation, now 2 parents are gone. I have a TV show called Creating Mental Wealth with Sherry James. It's a streaming show. It starts in about 3 weeks. And my first guest was John Sally. Do you guys know this guy? Has anyone ever met John Sally? Thank you. Good job. There's always someone. 4-time champion. I don't watch TV, but he was the host of The Real Housewives of some city. And there was a reunion, and he did that. He's also a broadcaster, sportscaster. He has a movie that just came out called Sneakerella, which is awesome because it's the Cinderella story about a young guy who wants to make sneakers, right? It's awesome, right? He's done a lot of great things. He also was the first guest on my show. And if ever you have the opportunity to meet John Sally, know that he is the very, I don't know, what word should I use, Sandra? He's very, yeah. There's not a lot of things that he feels that he does not say. And so when he first met me 25 years ago, he's like, oh, I love the things that you're doing and you're on stage and that's great. He did not know about my parents dying by suicide until I had him in Dallas in the studio to talk about mental wealth. And he said, man, your parents must have really not liked you at all. Right? But that's his humor, right? Well, I wasn't offended. It was a way to lighten the mood because I was terrified. It was the first time I'd sat on stage on my own TV show with my picture. I didn't know what to do, and he picked up on that, right? And he told me a story. So I'm not going to bore you with the story, but I will let you know that our past absolutely determines our future. So I'm going to say a word, and I think it was not too long ago, so you'll remember what to do when I say it. I'm going to say a word, and you're going to repeat it at the very, very top of your lungs. You ready? Nobody's ready. You ready? Okay, awesome. Sankofa. Sankofa. Yes, I love that. All right, so for the first person who can stand up and tell me what the meaning of Sankofa is, I will give you a 1-hour free Creating Mental Wealth session one-on-one with me. Okay, and got it. All right, can anyone? Anyone? Try it, let's go for it. Stand up so we need a microphone for you.
I think, I'm gonna guess, if I read correctly, it's the idea that in order to move forward, you have to go to the past and break shame to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Great job. And Sandra will make sure she gets your contact information so that we can get you that session. So there's this beautiful bird. This is a Sankofa bird. It's made of pure African mahogany wood, and I'm going to pass it around so that you guys can touch it. The African parable about this Sankofa bird is that she would never fly straight until she looked back and fixed her tail feathers, right? And the saying that came along with that is, we must return to the past in order to move forward. So when we're talking about things like trauma, when we're talking about things like mental illness, maybe it's just me. Oh, thank you. If you could pass it around for me. But we tell stories of our families, and we always leave out the bad part, right? We're like, our family has always been awesome. All of it. Yes, we do have that one cousin that we don't ever invite to anything. No, that's just me? Okay. Well, we usually have people in our family who struggle with mental illness some way or another. We even have some family members who have died by suicide, but we never talk about that. The power of a griot is a storyteller. That person has the responsibility of not just telling the story, but telling the entire story. I spoke at my son's school a couple of years ago, and I talked about the book that I wrote, and it was called After the Suicide, Leading with Love and Light. And I said, Miles, are you sure you want me to talk about this in front of your class? Because most kids in middle school want to talk about technology and all kinds of cool stuff. He said, no, talk about your work. The children had to sign up to come into the classroom to hear the story. And if there are any other speakers in the audience, the ultimate fear is that no one shows up, right? You're like, there's that one kid. Every class was full. Every time they circled through, every seat was full. And I asked the question, how many of you know someone who has died by suicide? They were 6th graders. The numbers baffled me. How many of you have considered suicide or have experienced suicidal ideation? The numbers blew me away. They talked to me about people that they knew that had attempted and succeeded at suicide at 6th grade. So as a griot, as a storyteller, it is my job to create curriculum, to have conversations, do keynote sessions, not just for my 33-year-old daughter, who will be 34 in a couple of days, and my 14-year-old son, but my story has to be told so that other people understand that if you are struggling with depression or anxiety or any of these type of mental illnesses that are so taboo, likely that story started well before you. Right? It was not you. So we'll talk about a little bit my version of that story. I think I skipped, yeah, we can go back to the next one. Next one. One more. So we've got people watching us virtually. Hello, thank you for being there. I didn't forget about you. I don't know if you stood up and danced though, so you guys owe us a dance. We're just gonna trust that you'll do that. I will ask for you guys to participate, right? Because the way you remember a story is when you are a part of it, right? So I'm going to continue to pick on you. That's not doing it yet. Hold on. Let's see. All right. The next step is we're going to stand up again because it's still post-lunch. And we're going to move around a little bit. So as much as you are comfortable and as much as it is safe, I would like for you to stand up and partner with someone. So 2 pairs of 2. All right, we're going to have paired ourselves up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Has everyone found a partner? Is there anyone without a partner? I'm going to tell you guys a trick. Whenever I speak, I do that because there are some people who are like, get me out of here. And that gives them the opportunity to exit. So thanks for staying. All right, so here is what your exercise is. And for my friends who are watching virtually, you get to type in the chat the words that our friends in the room are going to say. So, we must return to the past in order to... It's like, I don't know. So, we'll start with you. You're going to say the word Sankofa. Can you say it for me? Sankofa. I love it. And your response is, we must?
We must move forward, is that what we were just saying?
We must return to the past
move
in order to move forward.
Okay, we must return to the past in order to move forward.
Awesome. All right, do we have an understanding of what we're doing? Once you've said it, then you flip, and then you say it. And don't sit down, because more fun is coming. All right, so we're going to start off with our regular retort. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it, and then everyone's going to say it, and then you guys can start your one-on-ones. Are we ready? And I really want people who are on the way other side of the rooms to hear us say this time, okay? From your diaphragm. Can we do it? Folks on the virtual, type it. Type in Sankofa and type in the meaning. All right, are we ready? 1, 2, 3. Sankofa. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. All right, we're going to wrap up in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. You know what I love about that? That's chaos. Did it feel like chaos? Did it feel kind of crazy and noisy? How many of our lives have been chaotic and crazy and noisy for the past couple of years? But if we know that, if there's just one person that you could look in the eye and go, we've got to go back. We have to go back to the past. If we're going to move forward, we got to go back to those things that were important to us before 2020. What were we doing well? What do we need to stop doing that we were doing in 2019? I might be drinking for some of us. Or maybe just other unhealthy behaviors. But what do we need to go back to in order to move forward? Your next part of this exercise, you are going to share one item. Please don't let it be personal, right? But with your partner, the one thing that you are going to go back to the past and do differently after this session. Again, no personal, business, right? But one thing. It can be one word, one short sentence, but you'll have 10 seconds to do this. So both of you, no pressure at all. All right, so let's do it. I'm going to count down from 5. And then we'll count down from 10. At the end of 10, I love that you guys are cheating and starting early. That's awesome. I absolutely love that. It makes my day. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sankofa. I love it. All right, you guys can have a seat. Thank you. All right, I want to know how that felt. And I'll pick on people. Oh, I've got a volunteer. Okay, I've got a roving mic coming to you. Right here. Awesome. Right in front. Yep. All right, so tell me your name. Please stand up for us so we can see your beautiful face.
Hi, my name is Shananae.
Hi, Shananae. Tell me how that experience felt to you.
I was super vulnerable.
Good. Can we get a round of applause? Nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
All right, who else wants to share how that felt? I will. Okay, great. Yes, sir. Oh, hold on. Let's get the mic to you. We're up here in the front. Debbie's going to get her steps in today, huh? All right.
You said explain it again?
Yeah, explain to me how that exercise felt. How did that feel to talk about what you were going to go back to the past and move forward with? How did that feel?
It was normal for me, just like the practices I'm going under and teachings I'm going, so it was just pretty regular.
It was normal. Okay, so this is something you were very comfortable with. I'm going to ask you a personal question, even though I told everyone else not to do that. What age range are you in? So are you considered a millennial?
I'm I'm kind of in the middle of it. I'm 25, so I'm probably
Oh,
like,
cool. Awesome.
shit.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you. Kudos for being. I love when young folks want to participate. The reason I asked his age is because one of the challenges that I have, maybe it's just me, I'm sure it's not anyone else, but people in my age group, we don't like to talk about stuff, right? Like, we're just kind of like, there's a lesson you should know, but I don't want to be the one to tell you. And the thing that I appreciate about the next generation of leaders is they're very willing to say, hey, here are some of the mistakes I think my parents made, and I don't want to do that, right? And here's what I'm going to do to keep that from happening. So thank you for being a part of this session and being very honest. Yes, ma'am.
I want to say share and shame because I'm not ready to look forward to the future yet.
Wow. So her response was share and shame because she's not ready to look forward to the future yet. What's your name, beautiful? Tina. I want to encourage you, Tina. And I apologize in advance if this offends anyone. But I truly believe that the universe and that God makes no mistakes. I spent 30 years of my life teaching people about project management and task management, and I will tell you that God is absolutely the best project manager, and He has sessions in our life where we deal with trauma, where we deal with pain, where we have happiness and joy. And there's also periods of our lives that we have to heal from, but we don't get to pick when we do that, right? God already has a plan for you and for your healing. And I will also promise you that having the courage to stand up today and tell even a tiny part of your story makes you the most powerful person in this room. Thank you for that. So, I incorporated some music, I incorporated some dance. You will go home and do that for your family, and they will probably call somebody and say that something's wrong. But there are things that happen as a storyteller. When I'm moving my body, I am activating different parts of my energy. Right, my mind is not just it. Some things I do come from my heart. Some things come because I didn't eat enough breakfast. My whole body is a part of this storytelling technique, and I also know that this is my healing. My opportunity to continue to heal is to show you how I heal out loud. It doesn't mean that it's going to be your way. I love your hat, by the way. It doesn't mean that we're going to heal in the same manner. One of the things that I teach in my Creating Mental Wealth course is that we've got to have a diverse portfolio. Right? If you have a 401k and your financial advisor says, put all of your stock into the Hyatt Regency, would you want to hire him? Would you want him to manage your money, especially like your lifelong savings? You'd be like, why would you put all of my money into one thing? I've got to have a diverse portfolio. The same thing happens when we're talking about our mental wealth. Right? I do yoga, and sometimes it's music, and sometimes it's speaking on stage. These are all things that are mental wealth deposits that I want to integrate into my stories so that my children can tell stories about, here's something that I did, or more likely, here's something that my mom did that was a mental wealth withdrawal, and I wish she would not do that. But that's important because that's what I need to know so that I can parent him effectively. What questions do you have before we move forward? Nothing? All right, I'm going to make a little bit of a shift. And I don't know if this is going to work out well. I dreamt that it would, so I'm going to see. Sandra's like, let me stand here just in case. I'm going to toss apples at some folks. This is why you make sure you stay awake in my sessions, because you never know what's going to happen. So I'm going to toss. There's just 3, right? So please don't let me hit you with the apple. I don't want a lawsuit. So let's just know that this is a part of the story. Okay, you're closest to me. I have some faith that you can catch this apple. Do you feel like it? Do we have faith in him? We do, absolutely. Okay, you ready? Sweet. Okay, it gets harder as we go farther back. Okay, there's also people that are like, okay, do you think you can do it? You do? Okay, I like it. Your smile just tells me I think you can do it. All right, we're going to do it. Everyone's ducking. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to softball pitch it to you. You ready? Yes! Awesome! You can go to the next slide. Oh, no. Next slide. Okay, yeah. This is it was a good idea when I started. All right, any volunteers before I just decide on picking someone? Huh? Oh, I was smart. You have a volunteer? I'm just gonna, can you just hand this to him? Not even gonna risk it. Not gonna risk it. Okay, I'm gonna pick this up because I think I'm gonna kill myself. Thank you. All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna tell a story about an apple. Nothing I said today had anything to do with an apple, did it? Are you all confused? Oh, dang, I wanted everyone to be confused. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. So there is a type of presentation called pechacucha. Anyone familiar with that? Tell me what that means.
A pechacucha tells a story in 6 minutes and 40 seconds using pictures only.
Yeah. Everyone's like, ooh. So the only difference is I don't know if I can do it in 6 minutes and 40 seconds, but I'm going to do my absolute best. All right, so there will be no words on these slides. There will just be pictures. And I will stop from time to time to ask for one word. So when I point at you, I want you to just give me one word. I will use that word and integrate it into my story about those beautiful apples that my friends are holding. Fair enough? Do we understand? All right. I'm going to start my story talking about the importance of an apple tree. Not just any apple tree, but the apple tree from whence came me. I've seen apples that have grown in orchards. I've seen apples that just show up on grocery store shelves. I don't know how they get there, but I also don't know that much about myself. An apple tree blossom is beautiful. The fragrance is awesome. They grow in families, in groups, in teams. They look so happy. Don't you agree? There's something about one apple that's on this branch. There's something on this branch that's on this tree. There's something in this trunk and the roots that just might be a little less than healthy. But I wouldn't know that. I saw all of these beautiful branches. They looked amazing. They looked fruitful, and I knew that we would feed so many. But now here I am on a branch, and it's just me. Well, how could that be? But I saw the roots. I saw the trunk. I saw the branches. We were so strong. We were so everything. But now somehow I am on this branch all alone. How can I feed the children who are here to pick and eat from my fruit? What can I do when it's just me? Wow, I took a moment to take a look at myself to find out if there was something that I did wrong. What happened to my other apples? What happened to the rest of my crop? I don't know where they are. They ran away from me, surely. And it's probably because they have these things that are on this leaf. I don't know what these things are. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't make me feel well. It doesn't make the inside of my core feel as if it should. It feels like something that was not there before. Maybe there's something wrong with my leaves that makes them want to leave. Who do I ask about that, though? Who do I talk about? Let's take some time to look back. Okay, there's no one on my limb. There's no one on my branch. Let's talk back to the branch and find out what is going on. What's happening with me? Well, the rest of the family has decided that the branch was sick and cut the entire branch off. So, not only can I not talk to the limb on which I grew, no longer can I talk to the branch, it's all gone because the rest of the trunk has said, you know what? There's something wrong there. Let's just get rid of it. Here I am. Do you remember me, that little apple? My friends with apples, can you show me what my healthy apples look like? Do those apples look like this apple? That's the perfect answer. Thank you. I love it when a plan comes together. The thing about me as an apple from a tree is that you don't know what's going on inside of me. On the outside, I could look polished and sweet and awesome and amazing, but because of my roots, because of someone not dealing with my roots before I got to the stage that I was in, and don't bite the apple. I know people are tempted to see. Don't. No, you can't. I'm kidding. You don't know what's happening on the inside of this apple. You think
And if this is me, this apple is me. I've now taken a moment to go to therapy because someone told me that's what I needed to do. The spots on your leaves, it's okay. It's just from pesticides or something that's come your way. It's not you. Let's open you up and see what's going on inside. Surely you are just as pure and beautiful on the inside as you are on the outside. I just feel it. This is me in therapy. How do you think I feel now? No, I don't look like the other apples that I've seen. I know I don't feel like them, and now you've kind of shown me that I'm quite different on the inside. Next slide, please. The griot in African villages had to tell stories about empowering the entire village. African griot would not leave out the story about that little sick apple. Actually, that would probably be the reason for the story. We would start with, hey, in this particular season, we picked an apple and it was terrible. It had worms growing in it, and it was infected, and it was brown, and it was ugly. And that griot would bring that apple and show it and say, this apple came from our orchard, and we love it. Just as much as we love the ones that don't look like this is still our fruit. It does not matter how it looks, how it tastes, it's still our fruit. So let's treat it as such. What we will do, instead of eating that apple, is we will use it to fertilize the next apple tree. But if I didn't tell that story to my children think apple trees just pop up from nowhere. Where'd they come from? There were still seeds in that apple. As beat up and as bruised as that apple was, the seeds inside were still intact. The strength of an apple tree was still in that very tiny seed inside that apple that everyone wanted to throw away. Now, you guys have different color apples, right? So we were blessed with the gift of these apples last night at the bar. I thought about changing that, and I'm like, no, it is what it is. We were at the bar. Funny story. I don't know how many people in here have boy children, sons. Okay, good. She'll get it. Great. So we traveled from Dallas, and we brought all the snacks because, boy, we've got a boy. We've got like Kind bars. We've got fruit chews, all the yummy things in the refrigerator. And we come back the other day with this little white bag, this bag here from downstairs, and it's got these 3 apples because we asked the bartender, like, do you have an actual apple we could use? And she's like, let me go see what I can find. She brought these apples, and I'm like, it's perfect because they're not all red, they're not all green, it's a combination. It's gonna fit perfectly. And at dinner last night, we were like, can't wait to throw those apples tomorrow, it's gonna be great. And my son goes, was I not supposed to eat those apples? The look on my face was sheer horror. Like, literally, I was like, oh my gosh, please tell me that you ate candy and not the apples. Like, what parent does that, right? Like, please eat sugar, but not the apples. So the apples made it. Thank you, Miles. But what we realized is that one tree creates different apples. So science says I can do a little something to that seed and that ugly apple. I can do a little thing, something, sprinkle something on it. I'm not a scientist, I don't know what. But I can determine if this is going to be a Red Delicious apple or if it's going to be a Granny Smith apple. Who named the Granny Smith apple? Does anybody know? Who's Granny Smith? Who's nobody know? I just thought I'd ask. Okay, these are, it's one of those things you just wonder, right? Both of these apples look absolutely perfect, but we know that just because they look perfect, just because they're shiny and the photographer did a great job of spraying it with some inedible source to make it look great, we already understand that only what's important is what's inside. So when we talk about these, when we tell stories about how our apples came to be, we then realize, you know what, not all the apples will look like me, but that's okay. We're still all apples. Will a couple of us be sour? Yes. Some people happen to like sour apples, right? Only if you dip them in caramel, right? But some people like that. Sometimes you're not a red apple or a green apple. You are a combination of both. Does that make you less of an apple? If I struggle with anxiety and depression and PTSD as an apple, does that make me not an apple? Can I fix the fact that I am an apple? Can I grow up and say, you know what, I'm feeling banana. Today I feel like I'd rather be a banana. I can't. right? But we have to understand the analogy of how we look on the outside, how we present when we tell our stories about Sankofa. There was like a pause. Everyone's like sleeping. All right, next slide. Now, I will tell you that this slide really resonated with me because this reminds me of 2020. If 2020 was a picture, this was it, right? We were all in the same basket. We were all there together. We looked different. We were different flavors, but we were literally dying, right? One apple could not help the next apple, because we were all sick, right? We were all struggling through a pandemic, which we've not ever experienced before. So now, where that one lonely apple was sitting out on the tree, that lonely apple that I said was me, as sad as that seemed to be, imagine that same apple with all of the other apples. Who lifts them up? Who's responsible for being the one that says, there's this one that's healthy enough that I can take and grow? My job as a Sankofa storyteller is to let you know that there are seeds inside those apples and that I will get in there. Well, I don't know if I will get in there because I don't like bugs, but you know, if we take the analogy a little bit further, I will get in there and I will make sure that I can take the seeds that I learned from you and I will plant them and I will make sure that they prosper in a way that others, when I'm gone and retired to Fiji somewhere, someone can still tell the story about no matter how much trauma you've experienced, no matter how much pain you've dealt with, no matter how many bruises, because a lot of us are walking around and we're pretty with our makeup on, but we're very bruised. Our hearts are bruised, our spirits are bruised. We're still healing on the inside, and that's okay, because whatever power you believe in, whether it's yourself, whether it's nothing, whether it's God, Buddha, whatever it is, that's who this person is. They're taking what's left, they're planting, they're allowing your insides to become fertilizer for the next generation. Now, we talked about compost, right? We talked about like fertilizer. This is not the picture you see if you're trying to sell a new hybrid version of an apple. Do you agree? Right? You would look at that and go, no, I don't want that apple. However, we do want the apple to be consumed, right? That's the reason we grow them. But they're not pretty. Healing from trauma is not pretty. This is an apple that is doing exactly what the universe wanted it to do. It is feeding someone else. Looks beat up, looks kind of chewed up, looks kind of ugly. But so do we when we're healing from trauma, right? As long as we're using those bite marks to feed others and making sure that people know that they will grow and become stronger as a result of it, then my job as a griot is done, because this apple knows its role. It knows its lifespan. It knows what happens when we're all done with it. And we know how to tell the story of an apple tree in a way that even a kindergartner can be excited about it. When we, as professionals, we talk about cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR, and we talk about all these wonderful tools that work, and we get it, but can you explain that to a kindergartner? Can you explain that to someone before the thought of suicidal ideation begins? If we can talk to our children, talk to them as griot, as teachers, as providers of information. Hey, let me show you what this apple looks like that I just picked. Let me show you the picture of this apple after it's been eaten, but guess what's going to happen as a result? So if we decide to take our emotions from actionary right now and make them proactive, my goal is to get in front of kindergartners and have conversations about creating mental wealth. Hey, look at what happened. Remember that ugly apple that we looked at and it was all, here's a sprout. This will be a new branch. This branch will eventually bear more fruit. That fruit will feed more children. And that's because of the act you took to take that ugly apple core, dig a hole in the dirt, plant it, love it, water it, nurture it, and now this cycle can repeat itself. So the next two slides are because I'm a geek, and I'll slide through them really quick. And so to wake everyone up, I'm going to see if this works. Sankofa. It worked. Nice. Okay. There's don't worry about the data on the slides. I know there are people that are going to go, wait a minute, the axis does not align with, don't worry about that. The point is, there are stages of our healing, right? Our friend, I think she's left already, but she's begun a stage of healing, and she is in that very part of her healing that's tender. Thank you. She's very vulnerable, right? That word vulnerability. So if she was in this far left corner, a lot of damage could be done. So we have to be careful when we are telling stories about planting apples and apple seeds that we are not terrifying our audience. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be responsible for rain and sunshine and fertilize. I don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that the messages that we tell our audiences, we have to meet them where they are. If they are kindergartners, then we will lean down. I would, but my knees are bad. But we would lean down so we could be face to face and have a conversation where that child can understand. Over time, of course, things will change. Your color may change. Your perspective may change. There's always an avoidance and a tolerance aspect to growing, right? And a lot of times, we will avoid our trauma. We avoid the things that we don't want to talk about. But at some point, we move from avoidance to tolerance. That's where the story comes in. Unfortunately, most of us only talk about the tolerance part of the conversation. We don't talk about all of the things we had to avoid, the snowstorms. We had to talk about tornadoes, things that rip things up. The only positive apple we want to talk about, I mean, not always positive, but in most cases, this is an apple that we want to refer to. You want to talk to your kids about apples? People will go, yes, absolutely. Let me pull up my iPhone. Let me pull out my Mac. Let's talk about a successful apple. When you think about it, the way that company grew to be the way that it is today is the exact same concept. That level of almost transparency, like we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to sell it, and if you buy it, we'll keep doing it. It's the same concept, right? Do you guys see the correlation there? All right, so this is the Sankofa bird, right? All right, I'm going to pick on Kat because I love you so much. Kat's the wonderful, like, this is her event. She helped pull this event together, so kudos. You are absolutely a rock star. So, the Sankofa bird, the word Sankofa means we must return to the past in order to move forward. Given our current state of the world right now with the violence happening in schools and kind of all of this disunity, how do you think you could use this concept of returning to the past in order to move forward? How will you use this starting tomorrow?
You mean like in reference to what's going on in the world or just in general?
Yeah. Or either, whichever is easier for you.
You know, at MHA, whenever really terrible things happen, our former leader, Paul, used to always point out the fact that the people who were living through that experienced a trauma and that we needed to take a moment to get those people all the resources that they needed. And so I think to move forward, kind of similar to how you're saying, you're able to use your story, and a lot of other speakers have been able to use their own traumas and pains and their past stories to help people in the present. Absolutely. So by people looking back at their own pasts and their own traumas and their hurts, they're able to bring those stories to the present to help those today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well said. Yay. I love it. Yeah. So here's who you are. Each person who sat through this, each person who watched virtually, you are now a seedling. You now have the information that is necessary to plant the seeds, to grow, for the next generation to consume, for the next generation to then plant,
right? We have the information. Being afraid to share it is what keeps us where we are today. The numbers that we experience when it comes to suicide is continuing to increase. The age of children who attempt suicide is decreasing. The area that we live in, the general Collin County area in Texas where we live, the age of the first attempt of suicide is 8. So waiting until a person is in high school, waiting until a person chooses to come to a conference like this, it's too late. So the curriculum that we've created is one that we can get down on the level of that kindergartner and say, do you understand the concept of me giving you something? Did you like that? And the kid's going to be like, yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's an apple that my mom told me not to eat. Yeah, absolutely. But then how does it feel when I take something from you? If I give you an apple and you're excited about it and then I take it back, how does that feel? Tell me what that feels like. We have the opportunity to become these seedlings to teach and grow and develop the next generation. And if it takes music, and if it takes dance, and if it takes people yelling at the top of their lungs, make sure that your message meets your audience where they are and teaches them something that's bigger than who they are. All right. What questions do you guys have for me? Can you go to the next slide? Next. What question can I answer for you? Hi.
Hi. It seems just from the story that you were telling that a lot of it is saying that every stage or every apple has worth, that they matter. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how you can instill in, I guess, in children that they matter, that that they are worthy of this kind of attention and love. And because I think a lot of times they don't feel like they matter.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
And that they are integral to the bigger, that they matter in the micro, but they also matter in the macro. That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it, because I wasn't going to go down the social media path, but I'm going to because you asked. It's all your fault. No, I'm just kidding. But honestly, I use this particular analogy about growing an apple tree because it's something that children can see, right? They can actually watch that seed sprout through the ground, and there becomes this sense of hope, which sadly doesn't exist in most of the things they're watching on social media, most of the things they see on television. There's not a lot of like hope-friendly shows happening, right? So my suggestion is finding something that child is passionate about. So in some kids, it's Legos, right? It started out with one little tiny brick, and you're like, oh, look, it's just a little yellow brick. And then you show them the picture of this box, and it's like, you know, I don't know, Big Bird, right? And they're like, oh, this can become that? So it's the same thing. I'm saying, just like you are this tiny yellow Lego, but look at what you can become. Or here's a handful of seeds, and they look dry and dirty and dusty, but look at this apple tree. This is what you can become. Showing them what that apple tree looks like through different seasons, because there's going to be a season where that apple tree has no flowers, no blooms, no fruit, but it's still an apple tree. It's still a healthy apple tree. So finding whatever analogy works for the children that you're working with, but if they have the opportunity to put their hands on something, plant something, build something, then it sticks, right? If you can add music to it, sometimes it sticks, right? So I hope that answered your question. Yeah, and just give them the idea that because they're small, doesn't mean they don't matter. Right. Well, and because even the largest things started from the smallest, right? I think we had another question here.
What's your advice for when someone doesn't want you to tell the story because they are part of the story, or so to put a finer point to it, I have a family member with a serious mental health condition. I'm not ashamed to talk about that, but there is a lot of shame that, and it's made very clear I do not want this to be spoken about,
Right.
or other family members, younger family members, to know. So how, but then it becomes it's part of my story now. And so how do you navigate that, being honoring someone's explicit
Privacy.
wishes
Yeah.
while still knowing how important it is to not have it be secretive and shameful for the
course.
next generation?
That's a very great question, and I will tell you that I will give you my personal opinion, right? So this is just in my own personal experience. My daughter is 33, and she works in the medical field, right? When I said that I was going to write a book about my father's suicide, she didn't speak to me for almost a year, right? Because my story, by default, is also her story. And so I did find a way to still help others heal by talking about my own personal healing and my trauma and tragedy. And if I had to mention another family member, that family member was always anonymous, right? Or I could use things like stories. I could actually use a story that had nothing to do with people at all, right? We could talk about a tree. Let's talk about an apple tree. Let's talk about grooming a garden or building a house. So that's why my previous career in project management helps so much in the work I'm doing now, because I can say, let's imagine we're building a house, right? And if we don't fully secure and understand what's happening at the foundation, then the house might not give us the protection that we need. So let's make a scenario. I'm building a house and I've got 99 great bricks, but there's one brick that has a crack in it. If we don't address that crack, then it puts the rest of the foundation at risk. So let's do what we can to surround that brick. We don't have to swap the brick out. Let's just make sure that we extra fortify on other sides of that brick, so that brick does not have the opportunity to risk the foundation of the house, right? So that's where that storytelling absolutely comes into play, because you can make the story about something outside of yourself, someone outside of yourself, some made-up cartoon. There's a way to still tell the story to make sure that you're passing it on to the next generation, and they get it. They get it, right? At some point, they'll go, oh my gosh, the story about building an apple tree was actually about my cousin, whatever, right? Children are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. So there are ways to use storytelling to do exactly that. That was a great question. Thank you.
Sherry, we have a virtual question. And that is, if one is unwilling to go back, does that mean they can't heal?
Excellent question. And no, it does not mean you can't heal. I am 50 years old, and it took me 48 years to go back and heal. And I mentioned that a little earlier, that the universe makes no mistakes. The universe is the best project planner ever. When it is your time to heal, you will know. With no doubt. There will be no questions in your mind of is this the right time to share? Is this the right time to open up? There'll be no question. So there's no particular timeline. I can't say 6 months and 4 days from now. We don't know that, right? But I will say that the more time you spend alone with yourself via meditation, time with your therapist, yoga, whatever your thing is, the more time you spend with yourself, the more yourself will let you know it's ready to heal.
I think you addressed a lot of what is in the next question, but let me pass it on to you anyway.
Ready.
If someone went back to try and move forward but is unable to do so and is suffering, what can we do to help?
That's a great question. So this is when you need to absolutely have your team around you. So each behavioral health team member has a role, right? My therapist has a very specific role, and I know most days she hates it because she gets to hear the front line of all the drama, right? But she works in conjunction with my psychiatrist and with my psychologist. So it takes a team of people to determine how to break through those barriers. But I think we beat ourselves up as humans because we're like, I'm 50. I should have already figured this out by now. Or I met someone who was 22 and they've already got it all figured out. Our timeline is not the same as anyone else's. And so going back, if you're not ready to go back, if you try to do that, sometimes EMDR works, right? Where you go back to that moment and try to dispel it. And if your body and your brain isn't ready, that's okay. Healing is not linear. It's not like a timeline that has to go this, then this, then this. Then you wait and you rest and you try something different and you try again later. It's never too late. And it's also never too early. Yes? We've got a mic coming for you.
And then on the and just the cross run. I know we shouldn't be doing that, but on the micro and the macro point of view, just to stand on, validate what you were saying about your story.
Yeah.
The story as a CPS has been definitely great, and I do feel as though what you was teaching up there is definitely what has propelled me to do what I do today.
Thank you.
In my story. So definitely, everything you're saying is truth.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Can you go back a slide? Okay, so I had my timeline. I think I had like 4 minutes. So if you have it, oh, okay, 1 minute. Okay, great. So then we're done. Please do reach out to me on social media. We are a nonprofit, so you guys know what that means, right? So if you don't donate, we can't work. My goal is by the end of 2022 to be in at least 2 states and to have our Creating Mental Wealth curriculum fully integrated into at least 2 states. And because we're from Texas, that might be a little bit difficult, because but I believe we can do it. So please follow me on social media. You'll see the other things that we're doing. Please do watch the Creating Mental Wealth show with Sherry James. It'll be on all streaming platforms, and I'm looking for guests. So if you're interested in showcasing your talents on my show, please do reach out to Sandra before you leave, and she'll get your contact information. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you to my virtual audience, and have a great rest of the conference. And yes, you can have the apples. You can eat the apples if you like. Absolutely.